Alright, hello everyone and welcome to my first YouTube video. My name is Finn. I'm a producer, singer, songwriter, and I'm starting this channel to help anybody who's interested in learning how to make pop music. I've been producing for over 10 years. I've been singing and writing my own songs for a little over 2 years, and I think I'm at a point now where I can help people who want to get started. So I work in a digital audio workstation, or a DAW, called Ableton. And the way that we want you to think about DAWs on this channel is it's kind of like a camera and Photoshop all in one. It's the instrument in which we create music, and it's also the editing software that we use to make things sound pretty. Now, I use Ableton. If you're in another DAW, that's fine, but I will recommend that you use Ableton because that's what I'm using, and it'll be a lot easier to follow along. So in this video, I want to show you some of the basics of the Ableton interface and then just get you started making some sounds in Ableton. In future videos, we're going to progress to making more complex sequences and then hopefully making full songs. But I promise in this video, you will learn how to make some sounds come out of this program. Hi, it's Finn from the future. I was just going back and watching this and realized that I should have probably prefaced that there is a lot of information incoming. Because this is the first video and it's going over a lot of just basic stuff, it's going to be very info heavy. And if you're already an experienced producer and know this stuff, don't worry, there's going to be a lot more content on the channel. But if you are starting at the beginning, you might need to go back and rewatch this a few times. All right, back to the video. Okay, so I'm going to open up Ableton. And as you can see, when you open up a new project, you're bombarded with a lot of information. Don't worry, it's gonna all make sense the more and more you practice. The software is actually pretty intuitive once you start to kind of wrap your head around things. So what we're gonna do in this video is I'm gonna go over some of the key features of the interface, and then we're gonna make a very basic beat. Okay, so the first thing to know is that there's two types of views in Ableton. On default, you open up to the mixing view. Don't worry about the mixing view right now. We're going to talk about that at a later date. For right now, I just want you to hit Tab to open up the music making view. So here's the screen that you're going to be spending most of your time making music in. I like to divide this screen into three parts. You have the left side, you have the center, and you have the right side. So I'm going to talk about the center first. This whole space here is where the music happens. It moves left to right, and as you can see down here, you have seconds timing how long your song is. The left side is your search bar. This is where you search for virtual instruments, audio samples, and audio effects. We'll talk about what those are later. On the right side, you have tracks. Now, a song is made up of multiple tracks, and as you can see, they're stacked on top of one another. So you can have a vocal track, maybe a piano, a guitar, all sorts of drum samples. Those are all individual tracks. As you can see, there's Midi tracks and then there's audio tracks. We're going to talk about what those are in just a second. Another thing about the track bar on the right is that we can delete tracks just by highlighting them and pressing delete. We can Command Z, of course. We need that. Or we can add new tracks by either right-clicking anywhere here and inserting a new audio or MIDI, or using those shortcuts. So Command T is going to make a new audio track, Command Shift T is going to make a new MIDI track. And believe it or not, you can have projects that have well over 100 tracks, so it gets pretty technical. Some of the really basic information to know: the track numbers are labeled in these yellow boxes. If you click on the yellow, it turns gray, and that means that the track is turned off. If you click this S here, it's going to turn blue, and what that stands for is solo. When you solo a track, that's the only thing you're going to hear. The last thing I want to talk about in the track section is this little blue box with the 0. This is the volume of the clip. Now, you can turn it up to 6 decibels, or you can turn it all the way down to negative infinity, which means that you just can't hear it at all. You can also just click on it and type in a number like -8, enter, and there it goes. And so you'll find it's really helpful to manipulate this in order to get all of your tracks or the elements of the song to be balanced correctly. Okay, so remember when I said that the center is where all the music happens? You also have these three buttons up here: play, stop, and record. So I can just click play, and you're going to see this little cursor move from the left to the right. If I hit stop, it's going to stop. And if I have something to record, I'll hit this button. Again, we'll talk about recording audio or MIDI or whatever in another video. An easier way to play and pause things is simply clicking anywhere on the grid hitting spacebar to play it, and spacebar to stop it. So the last part of the interface that I want to talk about before we get into audio and MIDI tracks is zooming and playback. So as you can see, if you hover your mouse around certain spots, you can make your mouse turn into either the volume icon or a little magnifying glass. So with the magnifying glass, you can click and drag down to zoom in or up. And you'll get used to this once you just try it a couple times. If you hover it a little bit lower, you're going to get this volume icon. And that means that if you click there, you're going to just jump to wherever you were hovering over in the song. Okay, now it's time to talk about audio and MIDI tracks. If you see, we have 4 tracks already made for us, and 2 of them say audio, 2 of them say MIDI. Okay, so I'm going to start with audio tracks first because I think they're a little bit more intuitive and easier to explain. Audio tracks capture the actual sound of what you're recording. That could be a vocal lead, it could be a drum beat, really anything you want to record. But it's not just sounds that you're going to record on your own. There's also samples, things that have already been recorded as audio tracks. And fortunately, Ableton has a great library of things to get you started. So if we go back to the left side of our screen with the search bar, you're also going to see this categories bar. And we can just click on samples here, and then we have all sorts of samples to mess around with. Let's start with just a kick drum, and I will explain the different names for the drum parts at a later date. So we have a bunch of kicks here, and we can click on them to start previewing sounds. Okay, so we are back after a bit of a technical audio difficulty, but we were going to look at some kicks, so let's check them out. Okay, I think I'm going to go with this Kick 70s 1, and I'm just going to click and drag it into an audio file. And now when I hit space, it'll play. Beautiful. So now I'm going to look for a snare. Let's go with this ASR. Click and drag it in. Okay, cool. And then the last thing I'm going to look for is a hat. Okay, click and drag it in. Usually you want these to be a lot quieter. Okay, so now I'm going to start building a very basic pattern out of this, and it could be helpful to turn the metronome on, so I'm going to do that. I'm just going to select this region of the snare and duplicate it over and over. Okay, now I'm going to add another kick here, and there. Okay, cool. Now for a hi-hat pattern, I'm going to make it a little bit quicker. Command D. That's too fast. Let's do half that time. Select it, Command duplicate. And I'm going to zoom way in here and make a little hi-hat roll. So I'm just going to select a small part of it and duplicate it a bunch of times. And then I'm going to select this region and duplicate that again. So I'm going to change this second roll here to just have it go like that. You'll notice much of the process of creating a little segment, like a little beat, is creating a small moment and then duplicating it and then changing something slightly about that and then duplicating it, and that process just keeps going until you build something out a little bit more. Okay, cool. Not anything groundbreaking, but we're making sounds. So I think that gives you a good sense of what audio tracks do. They capture the actual sound of a recording, and it doesn't need to just be something that you recorded on your own. In this case, we're using already recorded audio tracks, which we call samples, and fortunately Ableton has a large body of these. So we created a little beat with audio tracks. Let's move to MIDI tracks. Now, MIDI tracks are a little different, and they're a little bit confusing. So whereas audio tracks capture the actual sound of the recording, MIDI tracks only capture the notes, which means that we need some sort of input to give the MIDI a sound. And then once we have an input, it'll play that sound according to the notes that we program. That might seem a little confusing, but I think it'll be more clear with an example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use our shortcut, Command-Shift-T, to create a new MIDI track. And I'm going to just drag it down here so that all the drums are together. And I'm going to go back to this left side of the screen here. And instead of being in samples, I'm going to go up to instruments. And as you can see, there's all kinds of really cool sounds that you can mess around with on your own time. For this video, I'm just going to use this sound that I often use, which is called Rhodish. I guess because it somewhat resembles a Rhodes, E-piano Rhodish. So just like the audio track, I'm clicking, holding, and dragging to the MIDI track. Now I'm going to highlight a region of space, right-click, and insert MIDI clip. We can also use that shortcut, Command-Shift-M. And so now this new screen pops up. And again, we can hover our mouse over here until we get this icon with the arrows pointing up and down. And that allows us to bring this window up. So the first thing that you'll probably notice about this MIDI view is this vertical looking piano thing. And it's exactly what it is. You can hit notes on it. So what we're going to do here is we are going to double click anywhere we want to start adding notes. It sounded like a horror movie or something. But there's so much we can do with these. We can click and drag them to make them longer or shorter, move them around by using our arrow keys, left, right, my other left, down, up. Click and drag a region to select certain notes, hit Command A to select them all. We can move these up and down octaves by holding Shift up to go up an octave and Shift down to go down an octave. And then we can also put these notes together to create chords. We're going to talk about chords and melody writing in a different video. For right now, I just wanted to show you what MIDI is and what it can do. Okay, so I just did some really random thing in like 30 seconds, but I'm going to select it, Command duplicate, and let's just see what this sounds like. So, you know, nothing crazy, but it is sounding musical. I think I followed through on my promise of getting you making sounds in this first video. And the way to really take this stuff to the next level is to start introducing audio effects, which we will be talking about in the next video. Also be on the lookout for a video on melodies and chord writing. That's coming as well, and I think it'll be really fun. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week.